Imagine this, a dinner table set like a magazine spread gold forks, catching the light, a bouquet of lilies breathing sweetness into the room, and a family smiling at a woman they never meant to honor. Elena sat at the head of that table, the quiet mother who learned to fold herself into corners so other people could feel roomy. Her birthday glittered with the expensive polish of her husband's house, her in-laws' approval, and her stepdaughter's curated affection. You know the look, the one where mouths smile, but the eyes do not follow. How many times have you walked into a room and felt the temperature drop, then told yourself it was only the air conditioning? Her husband's family called her the golden daughter, but not in the way that celebrates. They meant it like an exhibit, a thing behind glass curated and motionless. Elena wore a pale silk dress and reached for the glass of water, hands steady for the first time that day. She had told herself that this year would be different. Better. Kinder. Your mind does that too, right? It teams up with hope and sells you a soft lie wrapped in a ribbon. The gift sat in the center, a square box wrapped in expensive navy paper. Everyone waited forks, hovering the room, holding a breath that was not for her, but for the spectacle of her reaction. Elena looked at the box and saw the truth of what her life had become, a careful performance of gratitude, the kind that erases the person doing the thanking. She felt her mother's voice again, the one that taught her how to stay small to keep the peace. Some women stay silent until silence becomes a hard rind around their throat. "Open it," said Liza, the stepdaughter. Liza was 23, brilliant at the art of being adored and always impatient when other people needed attention. Elena lifted the lid. Inside sat a leather-bound journal, the exact one she had pointed out months ago at a bookstore, pretending not to want it. The room tilted. She ran her fingers over the cover, then frowned. The monogram was wrong. E.R., not E.V., the initials of her husband's first wife. "You felt that crack, did you? That tiny sound inside your chest that says something more than a mistake is happening?" Elena swallowed. If she had been the woman she used to be, she would have said nothing. She would have found a way to blame herself for accuracy, for daring to have a name. But something ancient in her, a shadow that had watched from a corner of the room for years, stretched its limbs and stood. "It is beautiful," Elena said quietly. She flipped the first page. A dedication was stamped in gold on the inner cover. "To our first, our only." The room did not gasp, it froze. Her husband, Victor, laughed a second too late. "Oh, that is, they must have made a mistake at the shop." You know this kind of laugh. The laugh that wants you to collude in your own erasure. The laugh that asks you to shrug off the bruise so everyone can keep eating. You have done it before. You have been the adult in a room of children, and you have smiled so the cake would not taste like salt. Elena turned the journal toward the table. The gold letters gleamed like a verdict. Liza shifted in her chair, her eyes hard and glittering. "It is just a joke," she said, "a silly joke. You always said you didn't like making a fuss." Elena heard the words, "You always the small chain that tries to pull a person back into a role they have outgrown. You always as if identity is a leash." She set the journal down slowly, a woman placing a mirror where everyone can see themselves. "A joke requires humor," she said. "I am struggling to find it." Across from her, Victor's mother reached for the serving spoon and pretended to serve herself more potatoes, as if busy hands could distract from sharpened intentions. "You know how we are," she murmured. "We tease the ones we love." Do you tease the ones you love by resurrecting ghosts and calling it tradition? If you were there, would you have said something? Or would you have joined the chorus of almost innocent faces, hoping the storm would pass and leave your veneer intact? Elena rested her elbows on the table, not rude, anchored. Her voice arrived steady like a tide that had learned patience. "Return it," she said to Victor. "Tomorrow." "Of course," he said too quickly. He kept the smile on like a mask that had grown heavy. "We meant to personalize it. The shop must have well confused the order." Elena nodded as if she believed him. The lilies smelled too sweet, a cloying perfume that made breathing work. She looked at Liza, who had been 6 when Elena met her, all knees and sharp questions. A child hungry for safety, then a teenager hungry for control, now a woman measuring love like currency. "Did you order it?" Elena asked. Liza lifted her chin. "We all chose it. It is the one she carried, the first wife. It is part of our family." There it was, the word family weaponized and polished. You have heard it used that way as a key to lock doors from the outside, family as if history is a wall and not a path. Elena smiled softly, the kind of smile that makes people think you are surrendering when you are considering your strategy. "Then keep it," she said. "Let her have what is hers." The quiet tremor in the air changed particle by particle. No plate moved, no knife rang, yet you could feel the rearrangement of power. It is subtle and relentless the way gravity draws an apple to ground. Elena stood the silk of her dress whispering at her calves. She looked at each face. I will take something that is mine, a new beginning, a new rule. Her eyes met Victor's. No more jokes that cut. He started to protest a practiced litany, but Elena had already decided. You know that moment when a woman stops negotiating with a room that has never bargained in good faith? It is simple, almost boring. A decision like a light switch. On. She left the journal on the table, its gold letters burning like a warning. She kissed Victor's temple out of habit and stepped away from the shrine of their pretense. The night outside was humid and alive, cicadas rasping like a chorus that had chosen her side. Somewhere in the darkness, a plan that had been fermenting in the cool of her chest lifted its head and asked for air. The next morning, the journal was still on the table, exactly where Elena had left it, as if no one dared touch it. Sunlight spilled through the windows, soft and golden, but the room felt cold, stale, as though the air itself remembered every word spoken the night before. She stood at the doorway, coffee in hand, watching Victor shuffle in hair, unkempt eyes, heavy with a man's version of regret, the kind that doesn't reach deep enough to change anything. He avoided the table. I'll take it back today, he said, without looking at her. Will he? Or is that just the sound of an easy promise meant to keep the peace until you forget the bruise? You've heard that tone before, not a lie exactly, but an anesthetic. You won't, she said quietly, almost kindly, because you didn't buy it, and you don't want to tell the one who did that it was wrong. He flinched. That little twitch in the jaw, the way men do when someone strips away the layers they thought made them untouchable. Liza meant well, he muttered. Elena stepped into the kitchen. No, she meant power. And she got it. For now. You can see it, can't you? The thin line between intention and dominance, how one person can dress cruelty in the costume of affection. That's what makes this kind of betrayal so slippery. They smile while they do it, and everyone else is expected to admire the craft. Victor sat rubbing his temples. It's just a gift. No, she said, it's a message, and I'm sending mine back. He didn't ask what she meant, maybe because some part of him already knew. Elena's mind wasn't on the journal anymore. It was on the years of small dismissals that had built a staircase for this moment. The forgotten anniversaries, the comments passed off as jokes, the way her name sometimes sounded like an afterthought in her own home. By noon, she was dressed in linen pants and a navy blouse, her hair pinned in a way that made her face look sharper. She wasn't going shopping. She wasn't meeting friends. She was going to the lawyer her friend Marissa had recommended last spring, back when Elena had confessed over coffee and the sound of rain that she felt like a guest in her own marriage. The office smelled faintly of leather and paper, the kind of scent that tells you decisions live here. The lawyer, a calm woman with eyes like steel underwater, listened without interrupting. Elena laid it all out, not just the gift, but the years that made it possible. I don't want chaos, Elena said. I want clarity and leverage. The lawyer's mouth curled just enough to acknowledge the word. You want to reset the terms? Elena nodded. Yes. Reset. No more unspoken agreements where she absorbed the cuts and called it compromise. No more walking into rooms where she had to measure her worth by how quietly she could take a hit. Outside, the day felt brighter, not because anything had changed yet, but because she had started moving. You know that feeling, don't you? The shift when you realize you don't have to accept the script you've been handed when the ink is still wet enough to smear if you press your thumb into it. When she got home, the journal was gone from the table. In its place sat a bouquet of roses. She almost laughed. Roses, the universal currency for covering up the wrong thing with the pretty thing. She touched a petal soft and cool and wondered how many women before her had been handed these same petals in exchange for silence. Victor appeared in the doorway watching her. I told her it wasn't appropriate. Elena tilted her head, and she said you were overreacting, but I told her you deserve respect. She looked at him for a long moment. He was telling the truth. Maybe not the whole truth, but enough of it. Still, respect wasn't a favor he could grant her. It was a condition one she would no longer negotiate. That evening, the house was full again, Liza arriving with her polished smile, Victor's mother with her perfectly controlled voice. Dinner was served, wine was poured, conversation wove between the safe topics. But Elena noticed how often their eyes flicked toward her, as if waiting to see whether she would slip back into the quiet version of herself. Halfway through the meal, Elena set her fork down. I spoke to someone today, she said. The table paused, air tightening. A lawyer. You should have seen their faces, the micro-expressions that slip out before the performance catches up. Liza's smirk faltered. Victor's mother's hand froze over her glass. Victor stared at his plate. "I'm not leaving," Elena continued, "but I'm changing the rules, and this time they'll be in writing." The silence that followed was not the heavy, suffocating kind. It was electric, charged. She had dropped something in the middle of the table they couldn't pick up and reframe. She smiled, not with malice, but with the steady warmth of someone who has found the switch in a dark room and refuses to turn it off again. Liza was the first to speak, her voice too light to hide the sharpness underneath. "Why would you bring a lawyer into this? We're family. We can talk things through." Elena met her gaze unflinching. "Talking has never been the problem. Listening has." Victor shifted in his chair, caught between defending his daughter and protecting his own position. "Elena, maybe this is going too far." "Too far," she said softly, but the words carried like glass breaking in the quiet. "Was it too far when you gave me something that belonged to another woman and called it a gift? Was it too far when you all laughed about it in front of me?" She wasn't shouting. She didn't need to. The stillness in her voice made every syllable land heavier than volume ever could. You've seen it happen the moment when a room realizes it has been stripped of its script. No one knows their lines anymore. They reach for the usual tactics, humor, deflection, denial, but those tools crumble in their hands because the person they've underestimated is suddenly taller. Victor's mother cleared her throat, the matriarch who had mastered polite cruelty. "You're making a spectacle out of nothing." Nothing. Elena's eyes didn't leave hers. "Nothing is the currency you've asked me to live on for years, and I'm done being paid in it." Liza rolled her eyes, not a full dismissal, but a defense mechanism. "So what, you're going to write up some list of demands?" "Not demands," Elena said. "Boundaries." The word hung there, unfamiliar, almost obscene in a family that thrived on blurred lines. She could feel their discomfort growing the way people squirm when they realize they can't get back to the way things were. But that's the thing about growth, isn't it? It burns the bridge behind you. Dinner continued in silence, the clink of silverware suddenly deafening. Elena ate slowly, methodically, while their eyes kept darting toward her, as if waiting for her to take it back to laugh and say she was only joking. But she didn't. She let the tension sit in the middle of the table like a centerpiece no one had ordered. Later, as she stood at the sink rinsing her plate, she felt Victor step up beside her. His voice was low. "You've made your point." She didn't look at him. "This wasn't a point, Victor. It was a beginning." He hesitated, as if trying to read the fine print in her tone. "And if I can't live with these boundaries," she turned, then her hands still wet water dripping onto the floor, "then you've already chosen." That night she didn't sleep in their bed. She took the guest room, the one with the window that faced the garden. It wasn't about leaving, it was about reclaiming space, physical, emotional, psychic. You understand that, don't you? The way even a few feet of reclaimed air can feel like a fortress? Over the next week, small shifts began. Victor was quieter. Liza's visits became less frequent. His mother's calls shortened. They were recalculating, testing the new boundaries, looking for cracks. Elena gave them nothing. No over-explanations, no apologies, no nervous laughter to smooth the edges. Just the quiet, unwavering presence of someone who knows she will no longer be moved without her consent. One afternoon, while pruning the roses in the garden, Elena thought about the journal. She had no idea where it had gone, whether Victor had returned it, hidden it, or kept it in some drawer as a reminder of his control. It didn't matter. The real gift had never been in the box. It had been in the reveal the truth about what they thought of her and the permission she had given herself to stop being part of their game. And maybe you need to hear this too. Sometimes the insult is just the key. You can choose to lock yourself back inside the life you've been given, or you can open a door you didn't even realize was waiting for you. By the time the lawyer called with the first draft of her agreement, Elena already knew she would sign it. Not because she wanted to fight, but because she wanted to live without asking for the right to exist in her own skin. When she hung up the phone, she looked out at the lilies blooming again in the yard, the same flowers that had filled the room that night. This time their sweetness didn't choke her. It simply reminded her that beauty can survive anywhere, even in a house that once tried to make her disappear. 2 weeks later, the agreement sat on the table, a thin stack of paper that somehow weighed more than all the years behind her. The signatures at the bottom were still fresh, the ink dark and final. It wasn't a divorce decree, not yet. It was a new set of terms, a legal acknowledgement that her presence, her name, her contributions were not decorative. Every clause was a refusal to return to the days when she had been tolerated instead of honored. Victor read it twice before signing, not because he wanted to, but because he knew the alternative. You could see it in his eyes, the calculation of a man realizing that keeping her meant more than holding onto her body. It meant accepting her will, and that terrified him more than losing her. The first real test came the following Sunday. Liza breezed in with a grin that belonged on a magazine cover, carrying a glossy shopping bag. She placed it on the table in front of Elena like an offering. "I thought about last time," Liza said, the edges of her voice sugared but brittle. "I wanted to make it right." Elena's fingers rested on the bag but didn't move to open it. "Before I look," she said, "I need to know why you bought it." The girl's smile faltered just a fraction. "Because it's your birthday month, because I care. Or because you don't want the lawyer involved again?" Elena's tone wasn't cruel, but it was surgical, precise. You know what it's like to watch someone squirm under the weight of their own reflection. Liza's eyes darted to Victor, then back. Maybe both, she admitted. Elena opened the bag. Inside was a silk scarf, hand-painted, the colors like water spilled across a summer sky. No monogram, no ghost of another woman's life stitched into it. She traced the fabric not as a gesture of approval, but of acknowledgement. "This," she said, "is how you give something without taking something away." Liza's shoulders dropped, the tension loosening just enough to hint at relief. But it wasn't absolution. Not yet. After lunch, when the dishes were stacked and the house was quiet again, Victor lingered in the doorway. "She's trying," he said. "She's adjusting," Elena replied. "Trying comes later." That night, Elena sat in the garden with a glass of wine, watching the shadows of the roses stretch long over the grass. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and petals, a scent she once would have associated with waiting for someone to notice, to apologize to see her. But now it was simply the smell of her own space, owned without permission. She thought about the years she had swallowed slights like bitter pills, the way she had smiled through dinners that felt like interrogations wrapped in etiquette. She thought about her younger self, the woman who thought endurance was a kind of love. Maybe you've been her too. Maybe you've mistaken survival for devotion. But the most dangerous thing she thought about was this: how much stronger she felt, not because she had punished them, but because she had stopped punishing herself. Over the next month, the family dynamic shifted in ways so subtle they might have gone unnoticed if she hadn't been watching. Conversations no longer circled back to the past like vultures. Jokes had edges, but not the kind that cut deep. And when Victor touched her shoulder, it wasn't in that absent-minded way. It carried a question, an unspoken, "May I?" she had never heard from him before. The journal never resurfaced. Whether it had been returned destroyed or kept as some relic of the old order, she didn't care. It no longer had the power to sting. That night at the dinner table had been the last time she allowed her value to be measured by their memory of someone else. One evening, as the cicadas sang their relentless chorus, Marissa came over. They sat outside with their wine, and Marissa leaned back in her chair. "You're different," she said. "Even your silence feels louder." Elena smiled at that. "Maybe I just stopped waiting for permission to take up space." "And yes, you should understand this truth. Some people will only respect you when they realize they can lose you. Others never will. But either way, the moment you stop making your worth negotiable, the game changes." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of lilies again, and Elena didn't flinch. She didn't think about that night. She didn't think about the woman whose initials had once been engraved in gold where hers should have been. She thought only of the garden she had claimed, the house she had redefined, and the life that now felt like hers, not because they gave it to her, but because she had taken it. The woman who knows her worth doesn't beg, she watches. Then she rises.